Guys, we are back. We are live with the Conquerors crew. I have an unbelievable, such an awesome guest today, Mr. Dan Cohen. This guy is an author, he's an entrepreneur, podcaster, host, etc. And I cannot wait to talk to him today. But as I do in the beginning, I just like to lay the groundwork for anybody that's new that comes in that hasn't seen our show before. And hey, for you regulars, it's always a good little reminder because hey man, it's Humpity Hump Wednesday, and Wednesdays are just kind of like that sometimes. And so I always like to just talk about the three pillars that we have of the Conquerors crew. And the first one is hope. And for us, hope stands for helping other people excel. And there's this crazy kind of law, I think, in the universe where if you don't have any hope, and I get it, you're down and you're out, if you can muster just a little bit of that and you can give that away, it'll come back to you faster and quicker than it wouldn't without, right? It's kind of funny if you feel like you can give away something you don't have, that it will come back to you faster. And so that's kind of how we view hope in the Conquerors crew. Is we're just trying to give away the hope, and if you need it, and if you can give it away and talk about it and whatever. And hey, if you need to show up because you need some, hopefully you'll get some. And so that's our first pillar. We got three of them. The other one is grit. And grit is grace, resiliency, integrity, and teachable. And to me, grace is, it's a lot easier for most people to have a bit of grace with somebody else and give them a second chance. But the way I like to look at grace for us is like, hey, don't be so hard on yourself. Give yourself a little grace, man. And resiliency, well, a lot of people think, oh, either you have it or you don't. But I think that's partly true, that I think you can learn to have resiliency. And it's a learned skill, talent, or whatever, if you will. But you can't start off with an Iron Man, right? You got to start off with some little steps, right? And build up. And so that's kind of how I see resiliency. And people are like, I could never have done what you did. Well, you know what? Human beings have a way that they just, when they're in a situation that somehow integrity, that is, well, it's much easier to have integrity with others going, hey, did you, you kind of did that. But at 3:00 in the morning, when you're looking in the mirror, have integrity with yourself. That's kind of the thing with integrity. And teachable, right? Always be teachable. I don't think that we ever quit learning. And I think we've all been in a situation where if we get a little cocky and we get on our high horse and we think we know everything, you get knocked off that thing pretty quick, and you get reminded, well, I got a little bit more left to learn in life. And so, and the last one is no quit. So hope, grit, and no quit. And no quit speaks for itself. So those are our three pillars that we have for the Conquerors crew. And always like to do those and just kind of lay the foundation of the podcast and the vibe and what we're doing today. So thank you so much, Mr. Dan, for allowing me to introduce that and coming on and being a guest on the show. I'm super excited. I don't even know if you can tell, but I'm actually a little nervous having you on. Yeah, so
I'm excited.
Tell us about you. How is your day? How is your week? What's going on? Let's ease into this thing.
My day has been great. My week has been great. I'm normally in New York, but my fiance part of the year is down in South Carolina. So I'm in South Carolina now, hoping for some warmer weather than New York, but it's been cold, but it's good to be together. Yeah. And listen, I'm excited too, because I love your three pillars. In fact, I think my story touches upon all three.
Yes,
So I
sir.
think that's interesting. And I admire you for what you're doing now and for what you overcame. So it's
Thank
really
you.
remarkable. And I think you got a good mission here and keep it up.
Are we okay? Yeah, yeah. I'm sorry. You know what? It was a little slow. And hey, I'll just tell you this on the side. Like if it's skipping, I'll go back and clip any of the things. So
No,
I'll sort it out. If it's I think it's on me, not you. So
all good. All
yeah, yeah,
good.
yeah. No worries. No worries. But yeah, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. It's hard work. It's hard work. Being a podcast host in a topic like this, and because our podcasts are kind of similar into
They are.
what we do, and I mean yours is awesome. I've seen some great guests that you have
Oh, thank you.
on there, and hey, you can give us the site and we can talk about that and everything, but I kind of wanted to focus on you and the book and the story. And
Sure.
if you don't mind, can we just can we ease into it by saying you're originally from New York, I believe, and
Right.
give us a little bit about that and kind of your background and your family, and then we
Sure.
kind of can ease into the book if it's cool with you.
Sure. I'd love to. Yeah. So I grew up in Brooklyn, New York. I don't know if my accent gives it away or not, but I'm not from Britain or Australia, as your guests can tell. And I grew in a neighborhood with a lot of apartment buildings. So there were a lot of friends around all the time. Lived in Long Island a little bit. I
Yeah.
lived in New Jersey in my married life. That's where I raised my children. But a big influence on my life was my parents, but in particular, my father, Herbie. This was a man that exuded love. He was very demonstratively loving towards his family, especially his wife and his three children. He wasn't a college educated guy, but he took his street smarts. He made it into a successful business. He was in the chemical business, telemarketing. He really revolutionized telemarketing by selling things that typically were sold over the street, over the phone. But throughout my life and throughout his life, he was, my hero, my confidant, I call him the world's greatest problem solver. I have a chapter in the book about that. He was the
That's
one person,
important.
yeah, he was the one person I could always go to, no matter, I don't think there's any statute of limitations on having someone like that in your life. I also have a chapter in the book called The One, Who Is Your One? And he was that person for me, even through my divorce, through my work history. If I had an issue, I would speak to my dad. I think that kind of person is someone who has no ego when they come to you. They want you to surpass them. They love you unconditionally.
Yeah.
And even I remember seeing a video with Tom Brady, the football player, and some kid asked him, "Who's your hero?" And he talked about his father.
Right.
Or President George W. Bush, the way he talked about his father. So he had that presence in my life, my father.
That's so
Did you
neat.
have a person like that in
Yeah,
your life?
I mean, my dad is like that for me. But when you're talking about the way you're talking about it, my grandfather to college, Louisiana, Ruston, Louisiana, where Louisiana Tech University is, where my grandmother and grandfather were born in the area, and so they went to college there and met there. My aunt and uncle, my mom and dad, my uncle also went to college there. I have a lot of family history there, and
Right.
and so when I got to choose where I went to college, I wanted to go, an hour and a half away from home. So it wasn't so close that mom and dad could check on me every day. But I was 5 minutes from my grandparents where I could go over and my grandmother cooked dinner, did my laundry, and, I helped out around the house. And my grandfather was one of these guys like, get your friends together, load them up, and we're all going to dinner, right? He loved to talk and sit and hang around. And some of the times that I remember the best were, after dinner, he loved his rocking chair, man. He'd sit on the patio in North Louisiana, right? Just, in a kind of a breezy thing and just like to just have a talk, man. And I love the man. He was one of my best friends. I kid you not. You can ask anybody. He's in my top three. And most people said the only difference between you and your grandfather is 50 years. And I take that as a compliment.
Yes.
And he wasn't judgmental. He never, acted like that. He had done his own things. He was an alcoholic for, some time, and he did his thing. And man, he did have a drop for like 30, 40 years. Right. And so he had his challenges and went through some depression and some things. And so he was just real. And he always offered advice and options. He never judged. He just wanted to help, and he just loved you. And you just knew, like, no matter what, like, it just felt like, I'm a Christian. I believe in God and the Bible. And I feel like that's kind of how God is with us. It's just ultimate grace, right? And human beings can't do that, but God, man, he was my man. He was my bud.
I get it.
Yeah.
It's interesting. What I think you just said is these people for us, and hopefully everybody has them, they're not perfect. They're human beings. They're flawed. They make mistakes.
Yeah.
And maybe that makes them even more special. But, there's no perfect person out there by no means. My father had his flaws too. But, I'll tell you an interesting thing, Trent. So, and I also wrote a chapter in my book called Perspective. I used to say, there's nobody in the world that has the kind of relationship I have with my father. It's impossible. I mean, it can't, and I have an older brother and a younger sister. And I said, I have the greatest relationship in the world. So 5 months before he had a stroke, we had a 75th birthday party for him. Okay. And from my mother down to the youngest grandchild, we all had an opportunity to speak to my father. And I can touch upon that later too, which I think is important. Cool. And when I heard my brother and sister speak, they felt the exact same way. So I learned that from perspective, you always look at your life through your own lens. But if you could appreciate other people's perspectives, I think we could have such a more empathy for people in a better world. But they felt exactly, he had a way of making, people he came in contact with feel that way. And they felt the same way towards him as I did. So I thought that was very interesting.
That's really cool that each one of your siblings had a special thing, because most families is like, oh, that's the favorite, right?
But they and my sister, she said, oh, all my friends love my father because he had a way of ingratiating him. But she says, can you imagine being Herbie's little girl? That special relationship. Right. Yeah, but that brings up something else that I think is important. I know before we get into the gist of the story, sure. I also have a chapter in my book called The Living Eulogy to My Father. Okay. And I've been to my share of funerals. My parents are both gone. I had a close friend, but I've gone to funerals where I didn't know the person who passed, and you hear such wonderful eulogies, right? And I say to myself, boy, the person who should be hearing it is a person, unfortunately, that passed. And why don't we wait to that moment to give a whole speech to about someone? Do it when you're alive. I'm sure you tell people, I love you. You're my best friend. You're a terrific person. But do you really share with them how you feel? So I urge people, write a letter, do a video,
Yeah.
send an email, do a handwritten note. And it doesn't have to be only an older person. It could be young. Share how you feel about someone because it's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
And don't wait to having to stand up there when that person is not there to hear how you feel. So
I love that advice. Just one thing that I do is for my grandfather. The first time I ever did this is I wrote his eulogy, and for me, I do rhyming poems, right?
right.
And they're very simple. I just do A, B, B, C, C. So the first, in the first two lines, they rhyme, and then and people love these, man. And I usually make them like 10 or so lines full, and that was the first one that I did. And I did one for my grandmother on my dad's side that was very special to me. And now when people buy a book from me, if they have a special occasion, and they tell me a little bit about the person and something, I can kind of get an idea, and I'll do that for them, and I get so much joy out of that, right? Yeah.
Right.
So that you're so right. You're so right. Tell them before they're gone.
Exactly.
Yeah. That's advice for me to say, you know what? Don't wait until they're gone for your poems. Write them before. And you know what's cool is my brother's birthday was 2 days ago, and I put together a slideshow, and I put together there's a Smashing Pumpkin song. It's 1979, the year he was born, and I played it to that, and I wrote a 10-line poem for him, and it rhymed about him being in the service and him, parachuting and doing his thing and how awesome it is. And man, I could tell from the reply that he loved it.
You touched him. You
Yes,
really
sir.
did.
Yes, sir.
So we had an opportunity at his 75th party, but when I had turned 40, I wrote them a letter, both my parents, telling them, and they said that was the best gift they got that year. Just that. So that's just my philosophy. You love someone, but express how you feel about them. It's a beautiful thing.
Yes, sir. That's so awesome. You really are. You're a very articulate writer and a smooth writer. And, that's why I think the article that you wrote, because originally your father's story was an article, and
That's
I think 300,000 views
That's right.
plus, something like
That's
that.
right.
Unbelievable. I mean, wow.
Yeah, so you're exactly right. So originally, when we get into the story, I wrote an article about it. And 10 years later, when I would finish my last consulting gig, I said, you know what? I want to share this to more people in a book. But that story alone wasn't enough. He woke up from his dementia, which we'll get in for a minute. So I included other family stories and life lessons. And when I reflected back on him waking up from dementia, I reflected on other events in the family. And I had like mini awakenings, things I learned from, and so I share those in the book as well.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. So do you kind of want to tell us,
Sure.
bring us into kind of, the dementia, how it kind of started, if you don't mind, and set that up for us.
Sure. So actually, 5 months after his 75th birthday, where everybody, spoke to him and he was in all his glory, and he had a stroke. He bled into his brain. He was actually, my brother's a physician and his partner treats my father. He was actually walking into the office for a visit, and they knew right away he was having a stroke. So it's another thing, people, you can't smile. If you ask someone to smile when they're having a stroke, they can't smile. They're not clear. They might have a drooping face.
Yeah.
So they knew the signs right away. They got him to a local hospital. Within 10 minutes, they had the bleed stop, which really probably saved his life.
Right. Awesome.
But from that stroke, he developed dementia. So, a lot of people are familiar with Alzheimer's, and there's a difference between Alzheimer's and dementia. Dementia is actually the symptoms caused by Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's are formation of plaque in the brain. But a lot of other things can cause dementia too, like a blow to the head, a stroke, certain diseases that can cause dementia. So there's a number of different ways that you get dementia. And his dementia was caused from a stroke. And dementia runs in stages. There are 7 stages of dementia. And he was pretty good. He recovered pretty good. And in the first couple of years, he was able to drive a car. He was able to have full conversations. But over time, it really affects your mental capacity and your memory, and then it affects your ability to function. And he went through all the different stages. And, when someone asks me, is it important to know what stage your person is in? I can tell you what was right for me. Everybody has to determine what's right for them and their family. And for some people, maybe they want to know exactly what stage they're in. I didn't, because I didn't need to obsess over, is he in stage 3, stage 4, stage 6, stage 7. We knew what was going on with him. I didn't need a doctor to tell me where he was. One of the first things that happens is, you start to lose your short-term memory.
Right.
And what happens is that a lot of people talk about grace, right? It's very easy to get frustrated when you're dealing with someone that has dementia. Why? Oh, yeah. Because they repeat themselves. They tend to repeat themselves over and over. And you as a person might say, you just told me that, or you just told me that. Or I just told you the story, or I just told you the story, or I already answered the question. Because as human beings, that's our natural reaction. Why do I got to tell you again? Right. And what people have to understand is believe me, the person doesn't want to repeat themselves. They don't want to ask you the same questions. It's not a rational thing. This is what's happening to the brain and their mind. So one of the first things I urge people is acceptance. You have to accept your person for where they are in their journey. You hear a lot of people say, oh, he or she was so much better 6 months ago. Why can't they be like they were 6 months ago? And they're not. And they're going to be different 6 months ahead. So acceptance is really 2 parts.
Right.
One, it's accepting your person for where they're at. So if they ask you a question a few times, let them ask,
Yeah.
And the second thing is to give yourself grace, okay?
Right.
And accept that you don't have all the answers. And there's times you're going to get frustrated. As human beings, how can we not? Someone repeats something all the time. Is to give yourself that grace to know that, sometimes you're going to get frustrated, but acceptance is an important thing. And I'll tell you a quick story about acceptance. All right.
Sure.
So I was in like a support group, Trent, and someone said, wow, isn't it marvelous that someone suffering from Alzheimer's, dementia is in their own world and they're happy in their own world? And I said, all right, I understand the sentiment, but I don't agree. I don't want them. I want to accept them from where they are. So my mother, who was my father's primary caretaker until we had to get more help, was traveling to her aunt's 90th birthday party. And my brother, sister, and I had to watch my father overnight. So we all watched him overnight. And then when we got together, we said, what did you do? And I said, I took him to a movie. My brother took him to a movie. My sister took him to a movie. So I said, oh, I took him to Argo. This was a movie with Ben Affleck. It's coming, right? And then my brother goes, oh, I took him to Argo too. And then my sister goes, yup, I took him to Argo too. And we were hysterical laughing, right?
My gosh.
But because he didn't remember from night to night, and we thought it was the funniest thing. I drove home in my car and I said, I'm never going to let that happen again. I don't care that he may not remember from time to time, but we're going to accept him for who he is.
Yeah.
We got to coordinate and take him to different movies. We can't just treat him that he's in his own world and he won't remember from day to day.
Yeah.
But, we had a good laugh, but then it was somewhat sad.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I've done. Some of the roles that I have is caretaker, but there is such and I worked with a nurse practitioner that was a specialist in dementia, and it's hard to be a caretaker, but then not the caretaker part is so much work that you have to do, like physically. But then with a person that's got dementia, Alzheimer's, or kind of the mental that's going, that you do with it, like that they're forgetting you, and I the hurt and the pain that you go through, that they kind of don't know you, or they're even mean to you, right?
Yeah.
How do you can you tell us how do you anything about that? Yeah.
We were pretty fortunate that he was amiable for a long time. But then towards the end, he would, like getting washed or bathed, he would scream out at pain and he would yell at us. And it's hard to hear someone who's so loving to you the whole time that's all of a sudden yelling. But you got to realize that's not them either, But it doesn't make it any better to hear it. But he pretty much knew us the whole time. There were times that he didn't, and yeah, that's tough when people don't know who you are. Although there's moments of recognition. What's hard about that kind of disease is you're almost mourning someone who's alive, because they're not the same person they were. But again, if you accept them for who they are, then you're going to love them no matter what, because the alternative is they're not here. Remember, a doctor once said to me, my brother was very involved in my father's care. He double-checked the medicines and the orders, and I really credit my brother for keeping my father alive a long time. And this doctor said to me, what is your brother? What are you guys doing? It's not the same Herbie. And I said, well, it's not for you to judge, but it's our father. We want him around for as long as we can, And even at the end, he would hold my hand and he would kiss it. And that was the essence of his love. So that was important to me. And someone who the first thing when someone told me about acceptance, her mother was in the hospital on a morphine drip, and then she eventually passed away. And she goes, I would do anything to have my mother back on the morphine drip because they're still here. How many times do you hear people, Trent, say, I wish I had one more minute with my loved one? Right?
So, yeah. Or I'd have said this, or I'd have done that, or whatever. In your advice of the earlier. Yeah. Do it now.
Yeah. And I'll tell you the second thing I learned as being a family member. So one is acceptance, and the second thing is inclusion. I think and this doesn't go only for dementia or Alzheimer's, but it could be and I think acceptance too, any kind of mental condition, physical disability, you got to accept your person. But when you have a person, include them in life. Don't treat them as if they don't exist. Because I think that's so important. And I'll share another story if you got
sure.
a minute. So my father loved to go to the horse races, right? He loved it. And one of the things he did with me and my kids, he took us to the track. He loved to call it the track. Okay. And we used to go and we used to have a fun time. And so before my son started first grade, we went to the horse races. And my father had a very good day, right? Tells my son, We're going to go to the toy store. Toy store, you can have whatever you want. My son gets $100 Lego. Boy,
Oh,
is
my.
he happy. First day of first grade, Trent, the teacher says to the kids, what would you do if you had $100? My son says, I'd go to Freehold Raceway. That's a true story.
Oh man. Oh man. And the teacher's like, oh my God, we've already got a gambler on our hands.
Exactly. So the next week, my father says, let's go back. I said, we never go 2 weeks in a row. We went back. We lost every race. I said to my father, oh, I'm sorry, we lost every race. He winks at me, he purposely lost. He says to my son, he says, remember, when you go to the track, expect to lose.
Wow. Right.
10 years later, at my father's 75th birthday party, my son is up there and says, Grandpa, I know you like to occasionally go to the casino. You like to play poker. Remember one thing, expect to lose. So he told it back to him. Now I'll give you the story of inclusion. So over the years, we used to go to the track. And my father, he would circle things on the racing form, like the time of the horse, the competition, the track. Over the years, this is how I helped judge his dementia. He would circle less and less things as he could read the form, to the point where he only knew the odds. So towards his end of his life, I'm over his house, and out of nowhere, he says he wants to go to the track, right? I knew 3 seconds after he said it, he'd forget, And at that point, I lived 2 hours away, and the horse race track was by me. I'd have to drive to New York, go back to New Jersey. I said, you know what? I'm going to take my father. So my mother, my father, me, and my 2 kids, we went to the track. At this point, he couldn't read a racing form at all. We're sitting there. Dad, and when he used to go, there was always one race. He pretty much was very good handicapping. So out of 6 out of 10 times, he would win. So now we're sitting there, and Dad, who do you want? Pick a number. Number 7. My mother, who would sit there and read, all of a sudden she raises her head. She goes, he doesn't know what he's talking about. That's the longest shot in the race. It was like 40-1, right? Uh-oh. My son goes, Grandma, when Grandpa thinks a horse is going to win, you can count on it. And I said, Mom, yes, when Dad picks a horse, it's going to win. Clearly tongue-in-cheek, but we put a few more dollars on the horse, right? Yeah. The race goes off. Our horse is in last place the whole time. They're coming through the stretch run. Out of nowhere, this horse comes out of nowhere, wins by a nose, right? But my father has no reaction, okay? Until his grandson says, Grandpa, the horse won by a nose, and the biggest smile you ever saw came to his face. And that made the whole thing worthwhile. That moment is a memory we'll always have. I think you froze. Can you hear me? Oh, there you go. So, it was all worth it for that smile he had at the end, including him in that day. So I think it's important. Include your person in life, because they are still a part of life. And there's things that happen when he has awakening, I think, that showed it.
Yeah. I mean, what your dad just sounds like such a wonderful man, and that's so awesome that you had a person like that in your life. Tell us, like, so you saw the things happening, right?
Right.
And tell us about this awakening thing. Like, this is not normal. This doesn't happen much, right?
No.
Yeah. And this is like a 2 or 3 day miracle kind of thing, right?
Exactly. I like to think so. So the summer 8 months before he passed away, he had 2 bouts of pneumonia, right?
Okay.
The second amount, they loaded him up with steroids and antibiotics, and he was in the hospital. And I went to visit him, and I walk in the room. He says, "Hi, Danny." And I said, "Hi, Dad." And he said, I love you very much. And I said, I love you very much. And he said, what happened to me? And I said, well, you have pneumonia, you're being treated, and you're going to go home soon. And then I said, this is not the man who's not speaking, who's not there. All of a sudden, it was like he was back. And I said to myself, maybe he's not asking me what happened to me, but maybe he's saying, where have I been these past 10 years? So for a man that was in the last stages of dementia, that was incontinent, that needed help getting taken care of, that virtually was not verbal, he was, if I had to put in percentage, I would say 90% himself. Wow. My brother, who had admitting privileges to the hospital, he said the bar was so low that he came back so high, it was incredible. It's like 1 minute he's not there, and the next minute he's having full conversations. So over 2 days, he was really very close to being himself, and the things we experienced was really remarkable. So at one point, he tells my brother, he says, I'm so happy to have a son like you. And my brother said that was one of the most seminal moments of his life, to have his father, his hero, that wasn't the same guy for 10 years, tell him how much he loved him. It was an incredible thing for him. Yeah. My mother, who they were married 62 years at the time, he says, you're the love of my life. Wow. My father had certain quirks growing up. He would take a nap. He would take a long sock, right, to block out any light. He hadn't done that for 10 plus years. All of a sudden, he says to my mother, her name was Arlene, oh, do you have my sock? I want to take a nap.
Oh my gosh.
He was also in life. If you were like a server or someone to gig, my father was a generous tipper. That I always showed people liked him. He's in the hospital at one point, and he says to my mother, do you have any cash? I want to tip the aides and nurses that have been so nice to him. I mean, really, really remarkable. Wow. My father was a boxer in the Army. He was 26-0.
Okay.
And so he loved Muhammad Ali. He reminisced about Muhammad Ali. And then there was this New York Jet football player called Wayne Corbett, was very undersized. He shouldn't have been a pro.
I know who he is.
And he said, and he loved Wayne Corbett. In fact, one year he got all the grandchildren his jersey. And he says, I remember taking a picture with all the kids in his jersey. What's going on with Wayne Corbett now? And I Googled it, and I told him. But he says, I was underestimated like Wayne Corbett in my boxing career. It was really unbelievable. And he reminisced about those kind of things. Yeah. So at one point, we're filling him in, or my brother's filling him in on what all the grandchildren are doing. Mm-hmm. And he says, oh, isn't one of them starting medical school, and didn't another one start Cornell University? And these were things that happened in the midst of his dementia. And we said to ourselves, how could he possibly know this?
Right.
So it got us thinking that maybe these people are in dementia are more aware of what's going on than you think.
Right.
So I think that was remarkable. But probably what led me to write the article was I tried to get my children there so they could see their grandpa.
Right.
And by the time they got there, he had reverted back. But we videotaped some of it. And I showed my daughter. My brother asked my father, what are you happy about? And he said, I'm just happy to be here and alive.
Wow.
And when I thought about that, I said to myself, I think he's sending a message that even in the throes of dementia, he still appreciates life and wants to live. And I thought that was really profound. And I said, And I wanted to share the story, and I like to write. And I said, you know what? I'm going to write an article. And there's medium.com. You write an article just to share the experience, not knowing what to expect.
Yeah.
And I got so many comments from people who say, wow, that's a touching story, Dan. Thanks for telling the story, Dan. But it gives me hope that my loved one with dementia either knows more what's going on, but really appreciates life and wants to live.
Yeah.
So, I thought that was an important message to share.
Yeah.
And I like to believe in that. So,
Yeah.
when you said, why did it happen? So my brother, the doctor, tried to come up with a medical explanation. That's what doctors do, right?
Right. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So first, his theory was, well, the steroids reduced the inflammation in his brain, and he came back to us. And I'm saying to myself, dementia is an irreversible downward trend. How can anything reverse something that's irreversible? I didn't necessarily buy it. Then I said to myself, well, maybe it's a miracle, And I'm not a very religious guy, but to me, that was as good an explanation as anything else.
Yeah.
Or maybe my father was telling his family that he's a fighter and he's fighting to live. So when I started a podcast 10 years later, and it's about people's awakenings from different things. I had my brother on it as a guest. He researched it again, and he said, no, steroids can do more harm than good. I think it has to do with him getting better and neurotransmitters, but I don't buy that either. We spoke to his neurologist, said, people have moments of recognition, but 2 days, he said he never saw that in 30 years of practice. My brother asked his colleagues, they never saw any 30 years of practice. So it was unique. And I did a book signing the other day, and a friend of mine came over to me, and this is maybe the best explanation I had. He says, I think your father might have had the awakening so you could write and share the book and help others and leave a legacy. And I like to think that's a good one,
I kind of have that feeling about it in some wonderful way as well. Yeah. Can I ask you, so you had the 2 days, and then what was the feeling like when he went back? Was it like this letdown or this disappointment, or oh, he's back, and then oh, can you tell us about that?
Yeah. I remember saying to my brother when he said steroids, I said, let's keep him loaded on steroids, and when he says no, he says too big a risk to his health. You can get disease, you can get a whole lot of things. And it's funny because another idea I have is I'm toying with a movie idea about. Did you see the original movie Awakenings with Robin Williams and Robert De Niro?
Yeah.
It's about a doctor who treated catatonic patients with a Parkinson's drug, and they awoke. Well, my story was a bunch of Alzheimer's and dementia patients get treated with steroids. They awake and go on an adventure, and there's a doctor brother and a non-doctor brother. Okay. And the doctor brother says, well, if we keep him on the steroids, it might affect his life. And the other brother says, but we have our father back. And the doctor brother then says, no, it's too big a risk for his life. He takes him off the protocol. The other brother takes him to court, right? It's a big courtroom scene. What's more important, the quality of life or the quantity of life? Yeah. But anyway, it was, it was a disappointment that he was back. But then we started to look at it as a gift,
That's awesome. That's really
we
awesome.
had him for the 2 days.
Yeah.
And it was remarkable. And now we went back to, treating him with dignity. And then after that was really, we started long-term hospice care after that.
Yeah.
And it was tough, but we had the gift of, look, I wrote a book about it. I started a podcast about different awakenings.
Yeah.
So I'm sharing his story, and hope my book will be around a lot longer after me, and maybe it could help people. So
Yeah.
there was a reason for it, and just
Yeah.
like you're sharing your story to help other people
Absolutely.
too. That's a great thing you could do if you can take what you learned and share it with other people.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
yeah,
that's
but
kind of feel like my life calling. I feel like that's what my life calling has become. I mean, what else am I going to do?
you could do a lot
Stay at
of
home
things.
and cry about it?
But you've gone through something, your recovery from 3 different cancers. You could go back to doing something else, but you've taken that now to coach others. And that's a wonderful thing, taking what you learn and being an advocate for people. And I applaud you for that. I
I
really think
appreciate it.
that's remarkable as well. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I
So
think your book does a lot of that, for people. And I feel like we're kind of in the same mindset. You know what? Like a genuine thank you that you helped someone. There is no price to put on that. And I appreciate that so much that I could help somebody have a better day, or in not as much pain, or even help them, alter their life or whatever. And you get a genuine thank you from that. Oh man, I mean, that's my currency.
yeah, I just heard a story about, I think it was 2 autistic brothers that were nonverbal for most of their life. And all of a sudden they started to talk. And the interviewer said to him, "Did you know what was going on?" And they said, "Yeah, we knew what was going on. We just couldn't express ourselves." And how frustrating is that? People think because you can't speak, then you must not know what's going on. So
Right.
I would like to think that people going through dementia maybe are more aware than we let on or we think. And if you treat them like that and you accept them and you include them, it's going to be better for everybody.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, I'm totally with you. You just, yeah, we've had some family members with Alzheimer's and dementia, and one of my dad's really good friends that was a boss as well, and it was very difficult for the family and everything. And you know what? You just you do exactly what you said. You just treat them with dignity, and if they ask you something 100 times, you just give them the same answer,
That's right.
because what it does is it hurts you, right? They relate, like you're the one that gets to control the speed, the environment, the situation, right?
That's
So
right.
if you want it to be a shitty thing, then you can act like a jerk, right?
Right.
And you have a right to do that because you're frustrated and in the patience. Or, you know what? You can say, you know what? I'm just gonna play along with the game. And at the end of the day, right? You kind of have to accept that. But isn't it more fun? Isn't it better? And at the end of the day,
Yeah.
everybody goes to bed happy. I mean, damn,
Right.
you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Another thing that I am just going to show my book second, Awakenings Are On.
Yeah. All about it.
And
We're gonna put the link on and all
I
that, man.
know.
Yeah, we got you, brother.
So the other thing is my father suffered from OCD a lot of his life. And I
Oh,
wrote a
okay.
chapter, Dementia Cured My Father's OCD. So once he had the stroke and he got the dementia, his OCD went away. But I talk about certain of the ways people, or some of the things people treat OCD and what some of the doctors do. And what they do is, OCD is a part of your brain that's either too much serotonin or too little serotonin. A lot of mental illnesses are just, wiring of the brain is off.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of stigma with mental illness, right? It's not like you get a broken leg, and you fix it. There's a lot of stigma. So a lot of times they'll say, name your OCD, right? So my father did that. He would have called it controlling or annoying, or he would have called it JETS, Jets, because it caused them to suffer, like the New York Jets. But if we can, so by naming it, it's not the person who has the OCD. It's a part of the brain has OCD. The same thing with cancer, right? Sometimes person is instead of a person who has cancer, if we can get away from the stigma of people of being a disease, whether it's a physical or mental illness, but a person who's dealing with something, we'd be so much better off, don't you think?
Yeah, yeah, like that's even kind of a way that I coped with it, is that I actually disassociated. And when I would go into these appointments, I was in New Zealand and it was during COVID, and my parents had come for the first surgery, but they couldn't because I was all alone. We were locked down. The only place I could go is like your home. And thank God, I had a food business. I could go to my factory and make popcorn for the supermarket shelves, and then, go to the doctor, right? I mean, there was nothing. And
Right.
I actually got to the point where I would take a notebook and go in there and I would act like that I was a patient advocate for a friend. Like I did, I have my list of questions, I have my list of, and I go in there and I do everything and I do all that stuff and I just get the information, and I treated it like a business project because that's the way that I had to do that. And then after you get the information, right, and I talk to mom and dad and we kind of agree, okay, these are options, this is our plan. In the evening after, because I go back to work, right? I mean, I have appointments during the middle of running my business and, whatever. At the end of the day, when I'm by myself, then I go down to the beach, right? And I become me. And,
Right.
I have a cry, or I
Of
get
course.
upset, or, I think about the situation, right? And
It's okay to feel emotion. That's a thing. A lot of things, men shouldn't cry, but I'm a big advocate. If you say, when you're going through something tough or someone loved one's going through tough, it's okay to let it out and to cry. You don't have to be strong all the time. These things
well,
are
I think
rough,
when you keep it in, I think you actually keep it in and then it comes out. It actually makes something inside of you not right. That's
Right.
what gives you the health issues inside. That's what I think, anyways. You got to get it out, So,
And you and I were talking about this off air, but you got to be your own best advocate, right? And you can't rely blindly on the medical profession, even though they may know better in certain respects. You know yourself, you know your body, and you can't be afraid to ask questions, and you can't be because you have to be your best advocate, or have someone in your family that can be your best advocate.
that's
Right?
exactly right. And that's really all I try to do is help people and give them the confidence to say, it's okay. It is your life. You are paying the insurance. You're
Right.
paying the bills. If you're paying the bills and you're talking to the yard man, if he does the yard, and you didn't like it, you just say, hey, you missed this spot.
That's
Right.
right. That's
And,
right.
and it's a taboo thing
That's
that
right.
we have, and it's not a disrespectful thing. And you know what? If the doctor takes it like that, he might not be the right fit for you, right? Because I love it when I say, hey, doc, I might go get a second opinion about how serious this is. And if he says, you know what, I want you to do that and bring me back the results and let's compare them. And because he realizes that two heads are better than one.
Right.
And if he's an arrogant guy, he might not be the right fit for you. If that's who you choose for your team, cool. But I'm going to be the quarterback of my life. I want to call the plays. I'm not giving it to the guy on the sidelines, right? It took me 2 years to learn that. And it's tough, man. It's tough, that this medical thing, business with ethics and health, it's a tough.
No, you have to be your best advocate. Absolutely. I think we froze there a second again. There you go.
Yeah.
Especially when medicine is going today, with things that should have been like, why urgent cares have come into popularity is because doctors don't see sick patients anymore. When doctors seeing sick patients, you don't have the need for urgent cares. So concierge doctors, you pay money to a doctor for him to really be there for you. That should be what a doctor does normally, So you got to be your best advocate. You absolutely should be.
Yes, sir. Yes,
I
sir.
applaud you for helping people with that.
Yeah. Take the advice of the medical professional and use that as an input to the final decision that you make, because like you said, Mr. Dan, you're the one that's been inside there forever.
That's right.
They don't. They just know what's best for what they know about. And you need that. And you need that info, right? Yeah.
Of course.
That's
I couldn't agree with you more. Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Is there anything that you would like to share that we about caregiver stuff, book stuff, anything?
Again, I just think, caregivers and family members got to give themselves grace and allow themselves to not know all the answers. And sometimes they're going to get frustrated, but accepting their person for where they're at. Like I said, again, my thing, I don't profess to be a professional dementia care house. No means. Right. And this was just right for me. It's just, is acceptance and inclusion. And I think my father's experience told me that maybe we did the right thing I would weekly or bi-weekly, I would take them to the movies, my mother and her father. And I knew he wasn't going to remember 5 minutes later, but there were times you could see a sad movie, the tears in his eyes. He was enjoying it in the moment. And then when I couldn't take him out of the house, we would watch a movie on TV and we'd sit and have lunch. So, that's my advice in a nutshell. Not everybody's going to have an awakening like I had,
right?
But if you treat them as part of life and include them, you're going to have so much of a better situation. And I learned other things. So, in other stories, I told you again about the track, right? So my father used to put the car in the valet, as opposed to self-park. It's interesting. The self-park was right next to the entrance. The valet, you had to walk 100 yards, but we still went to the valet, right? No matter how many times we went over 20 years, the same guy always took the car, right? And as my father got frailer, right, he would help me take the walker out of the car or the wheelchair out of the car. And then at a certain point, usually my father was sitting next to me, my kids and my mother in the back seat. He'd motion to me to get in the back, and he would drive us to the entrance, okay? And that time he could have been parking more cars and getting more cars and getting more tips, right? And then eventually, I don't know how this guy knew it, but when we were leaving, all of a sudden he'd show up with the car and he'd take us back to the parking lot. And I don't think he knew what my father was going through, but he knew that he was going through something. And it was just his small acts of kindness really meant so much to us. Yeah. And it was so interesting that, I'm not necessarily a big believer in signs, but I always feel my father's presence with me. And I have another chapter about memories. You can choose to remember someone as they were frail. I choose to remember who he was, and maybe that makes it easier for me. Yeah. But after my father passed away, my son and I decide that we're going to go to the track to honor my father. We're going to try to find a horse with his name or Angels Among Us. We couldn't find any names. And then we figured, all right, we're going to bet one race that we're sure we're going to win, just like my father did. Well, we lost that race, right? Then if we win, it's my father making us win, right? Nope. We broke even, and we said, all right, my father broke even. But then I remembered something. When I drove up, right, this valet, I think his name was Joey, he's looking in the car intently, right? And he says to me, all right, get in the back. He was looked in the car. He was ready to drive my father and me and the family to the front gate. And I got out and I said, no, he passed away. And he said, oh, I'm so sorry. But you know what? He might have actually saw my father sitting with us in that car. So I like to think so. So,
Wow.
but when I reflected on it, his just small acts of kindness were just so meaningful to us as a family. And so I share those kind of stories too, that because an awakening doesn't always have to be a religious or a spiritual thing. It could be an awareness or a realization of something.
Yeah.
And in my podcast, I tell other people's stories. So I have, like, I want you on the next time. We couldn't get it done.
Sure.
People having awakening moments, whether it's a light bulb moment or a moment over time, people overcoming traumas and illnesses and loss. And one guy was bullied his whole life. Yeah. At 47 years old, he sees Patch Adams. I don't know if you ever, there was a movie, there's a famous clown, Robin Williams. And Patch Adams was looking for people to go on a mission with him to Russia. And he says, all right, I'll go. And he's never been a clown before. And now he's Bullseye the Clown. So he went from being bullied to Bullseye the Clown. He went from wanting to be invisible so he doesn't get bullied to being as visible as he can. So he tells stories like that. So
and he has his clown outfit on your podcast. Is that
That's right? Yes, he comes out in full makeup. It's fabulous. So
that's awesome, man. Yeah, and I know that like some people's awakenings may be like they overcame addiction or something like that.
100%.
I think that's so cool. You know. So yours is kind of an awakening. Mine's like conquering, and you know what? They're so very similar.
Yeah,
they're so very similar, right?
And it's great to tell these stories because if you can touch someone else, then you're doing a good thing, and you clearly are doing a good job at it, and you seem to enjoy it. And I give you a lot of credit. It's not, as we talked about before, and it's a bigger undertaking than just turning it on, and there's a lot involved in it. So I applaud you.
Thank you. I don't think people realize, right, the 10% that they see here and the 90% that's going on behind the scenes, right? And that's just kind of how it is. And it's a lot of hard work behind the scenes, but
it is.
You know, I think both you and I, you know, that one or two thank yous that we get,
that's right,
make it all worth it. And you know, you talking about the show and the compliment today, man, that touches my heart, and it gives me my fire. And I really do personally, I really do appreciate that. Yeah.
No, it's the truth. It's truth. I admire what you've gone through, and I've admired what you've gone through, and not only in the podcast, what you're doing, but in your personal life, being an advocate for cancer patients. That's a fabulous thing. It really is.
Thank you. And hey, you too. I mean, how awesome. So tell us, you know, give us like, you know, give us the spiel, right? Tell us where we can get the book. Tell us about where the podcast. Tell us how we can get in touch with you if we need to.
So the book is everything. I'm a brand guy. It's called Awakenings in Real Life. And it says, my dad's awakening from dementia woke me up too. And that's the other stories of lessons I learned. You could find it on Amazon. You could find it on Barnes and Noble, and you could find it in select bookstores. If you go to my website, awakeningsinreallife.com, you could see both a link to Amazon to get the book. I also have my podcast episodes on there, links to, it's also on YouTube and Spotify and Apple and other platforms. And again, I'm telling other people's stories of awakenings and things they came up with. I welcome people reaching out to me. They can email me at info@awakeningsinreallife, whether they want to. Oh, one other thing. In this book, I have, I call them reflect pages where I have lines. So at the end of each chapter, I want to bring the reader into the story. So like the story about kindness, was there a situation, an act of kindness with your loved one that have something to you? or where was a situation where you accepted the situation, or another situation where you included your person to caregive. So I give people the ability to reflect and hopefully become a part of the book. And a lot of the comments I got is people really like that. So
That's a great
you can
idea.
email me if you want to share an awakening story you have, or you want to talk to me about dementia care. I love talking to people. And that's basically it. The book is on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, or certain bookstores. The podcast is wherever you find your podcast. And I hope you enjoy it. And you can always reach out to me personally as well.
Let me
And
ask
we're
you,
on social media. Also, Awakenings in Real Life. We got a Facebook page, Instagram, X, a YouTube page. It's also Awakenings in Real Life. Threads,
TikTok and Threads,
right.
I think.
Yeah. So you'll see I post various clips from the shows.
Can I ask you, if people buy the book like directly from you on your site, does more of that go to you instead?
I don't sell it directly on the site.
Okay.
I just push them to the Amazon.
I just wondered because some authors do that, right? And then
no. I and if you like the book, it's meaningful to get a review. That's very helpful for authors. Just like podcasts, if you get a review on your podcast, it helps. These algorithms today, reviews are very important. So same thing. If you like what Trent is doing, give a review on Apple or Spotify or whatever. It really helps us attract. We could do a great job, but we want it to be seen. We can only do so much on our own. So
that's it. That's it. Yeah, that's so right. Yeah. I appreciate it. Hey, I'm gonna take us out, but I'll give you the last word before we do that. If you have anything else that you'd like to share or plug or anything, no worries.
My last word is really to thank you, because I really appreciate the opportunity to share this story. I enjoy speaking to you. We've gone through, I think we're trying to do similar things, although I've not experienced what you have. That's personally, I think it's remarkable. And again, I really I enjoyed this so much. I want you to keep plugging away, and doing what you're doing. And I'm so happy to be a small part of it.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I'm going to take us out and we'll go off live. And then if you don't mind, we'll stick around for just a minute afterwards.
Sure.
So guys, man, what an awesome guest today. Mr. Dan Cohen, what a wealth of knowledge and from his heart, so genuine and polite and knowledgeable, guys. So, hey, have a good week. God bless you all. Godspeed, and never forget that grit don't quit. We are out.
That was great.
Let me just I'm gonna try to stop this thing.